every single one of you WNBA players, you better pray that Caitlin Clark doesn't get injured, because she's keeping your league afloat.
Angel Reese recently sparked intense debate by making a striking declaration, suggesting that WNBA players could potentially organize a strike in response to the league's persistently low salaries, a topic that has long been a point of contention. In an unfiltered admission, the rising star candidly revealed that her current salary of $74,000 falls woefully short of meeting her financial obligations, shedding light on the broader issue of compensation disparities in professional women's basketball. Her remarks not only underscore the financial struggles faced by many WNBA athletes, but also fuel ongoing discussions about pay equity, particularly in comparison to their NBA counterparts, who earn exponentially more. As her statement circulates, it raises critical questions about the sustainability of WNBA careers, the necessity for improved revenue-sharing models, and whether collective action could serve as a catalyst for transformative change within the league.
Ladies who are making $74,000 a year, you chose this profession. You know how much you make in the WNBA. Whatever your career you choose, you should probably look at what the career earnings are of going into that field.
However, rather than garnering widespread support for her bold stance, Angel Reese found herself facing a harsh dose of reality delivered by none other than Patrick Bet-David during his latest podcast. Without hesitation, the outspoken entrepreneur and commentator dismantled Reese's argument, offering an unfiltered critique that laid bare the financial struggles plaguing the WNBA. In a candid and unrelenting assessment, Bet-David not only underscored the league's ongoing revenue challenges, but also took direct aim at what he perceived as Reese's misplaced sense of entitlement, highlighting the economic realities that dictate player salaries. His remarks served as a sobering counterpoint to Reese's claims, reinforcing the notion that financial compensation in professional sports is inextricably tied to market demand, viewership, and overall profitability, factors that continue to hinder the WNBA's ability to offer salaries on par with its male counterpart.
WNBA players could go on strike over salary and benefits. So Angel Reese says this: I love watching her highlights of missing shots. She's got to be the worst shooter you've met in your life.
Because I'm hearing, like, yeah, they don't give us, if y'all don't give us what we want, like, we sit out. That's a possibility.
As Caitlin Clark continues to elevate the WNBA, her impact on the league has been nothing short of transformative, driving record-breaking attendance, skyrocketing viewership, and increased sponsorship deals, all without once complaining about money. The league recently experienced its highest attendance in 2 decades, with 2.3 million fans filling arenas, a staggering 48% increase from 2023 to 2024, a phenomenon now widely referred to as the Caitlin Clark effect. However, the contrast between Clark's quiet revolution and the demands of other players, such as Angel Reese, has ignited controversy. Reese, never one to shy away from voicing her frustrations, took to Instagram Live to lament her $74,000 WNBA salary, claiming it was insufficient to cover her bills and paled in comparison to the lucrative $1.8 million she earned through NIL, name, image, and likeness deals while playing at LSU. Her grievances, however, were met with widespread criticism, with many pointing out that the WNBA, unlike the NBA, is not a billion-dollar industry and has struggled to turn a profit for years. The stark financial reality is that the league operates at an annual loss, heavily subsidized by the NBA, with reports indicating that it hemorrhaged between $40 to $50 million last year alone. This economic backdrop makes Reese's push for higher salaries appear unrealistic, as professional sports salaries are dictated by revenue, not personal expectations or comparisons to men's leagues. The situation took a dramatic turn when entrepreneur and podcaster Patrick Bet-David dismantled Reese's argument with cold, hard facts. On his podcast, he reminded his audience that in business, revenue dictates wages, and until the WNBA generates sustainable profits, demanding higher salaries is futile. He highlighted that the NBA generates over $11 billion annually, while the WNBA's revenue remains a mere fraction of that, struggling to reach $200 million. If the league isn't profitable, there is no additional money to allocate to players, simple economics that Reese and others seem to ignore. Bet-David further ridiculed Reese's suggestion of a potential player strike, pointing out that if the WNBA ceases operations, it actually saves money by avoiding operating costs, making a strike an ineffective bargaining tool. Even former WNBA star Lisa Leslie once jokingly suggested that NBA players could take a donation to bridge the gender pay gap, highlighting the financial chasm between the two leagues. Beyond the economic debate, Bet David also scrutinized Reese's on-court performance, questioning whether her skills warranted the salary increase she desires. He bluntly pointed out her poor shooting ability, stating, "She's got to be the worst shooter you've met in your life," implying that if she wants star-level pay, she needs to perform at a star-level caliber. This sentiment was echoed by others who argue that players like Caitlin Clark are making the league more valuable through sheer talent and marketability, rather than entitlement-driven demands. In contrast to Reese's complaints, Clark has remained focused on her game, consistently breaking records and drawing massive crowds, reinforcing the idea that elevating women's basketball requires action, not just rhetoric. Further fueling the debate, the discussion surrounding financial disparities in women's sports took another turn when figures like Dejounte Carrington and Reese suggested that WNBA players deserve a larger revenue share, threatening a holdout if their demands aren't met. However, their threats ring hollow when compared to the financial realities of the league. Unlike the NBA, where 50% of its multi-billion-dollar revenue is allocated to player salaries, the WNBA operates under an entirely different financial structure, distributing only 9.3% of its much smaller revenue to players. While the desire for higher wages is understandable, the economic fundamentals do not support their demands, and threatening to strike in a league that has never turned a profit only further weakens their argument. Ultimately, the contrasting approaches of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese exemplify two diverging paths in women's basketball, one that seeks to grow the game organically through talent and marketability, and another that prioritizes financial grievances over the sport itself. As Clark continues to shine, drawing unparalleled attention to the WNBA, the league finds itself at a crossroads, forced to reckon with the realities of its financial limitations while navigating the demands of its players. The question remains, will the league prioritize sustainable growth, or will misguided entitlement derail the progress that players like Clark are working tirelessly to achieve? The financial reality of the WNBA is one that many of its players refuse to acknowledge, yet on his podcast, Patrick Bet David laid out the harsh truth in unequivocal terms. For nearly 3 decades, the WNBA has operated as a financial disaster, hemorrhaging between $40 to $50 million annually, with its survival dependent on the NBA's subsidies. The brutal reality is that if WNBA players were to stage a strike, the NBA itself might actually applaud the move, as it would temporarily halt the financial drain imposed by the league. While NBA owners, business moguls who amass their wealth through strategic investments, would never willingly funnel millions into an enterprise with no prospects of profitability, they have continued to prop up the WNBA despite its perpetual losses. In contrast to the NBA, which generates over $11 billion in annual revenue, the WNBA operates on a shoestring budget, bringing in an estimated $150 to $200 million per year, while still failing to turn a profit. Yet, despite this grim financial picture, players like Angel Reese have taken an audacious stance, openly discussing a potential strike should their demands for higher salaries not be met, a notion that is entirely detached from economic reality. Patrick systematically dismantled Reese's argument, pointing out that historical sports strikes, such as the 1994 MLB strike, the 1998 NBA lockout, and the 2004 NHL lockout, were all predicated on the leagues being profitable. Those leagues had the financial leverage to negotiate better terms because they generated billions in revenue. The WNBA, on the other hand, lacks any such bargaining power because it has never been profitable. In fact, if WNBA players were to go on strike, the league might actually save money by eliminating operational costs, and the NBA could breathe a sigh of relief at the temporary cessation of its financial obligations. Furthermore, the intelligent minds within the WNBA likely understand this economic reality and are cringing at Reese's public declarations, knowing that her stance is not only impractical, but potentially harmful to any meaningful negotiations the league might undertake. Where Reese's argument becomes even more absurd is when juxtaposed against the undeniable impact of Caitlin Clark on the league. Clark has single-handedly driven an unprecedented surge in WNBA viewership, attendance, and merchandise sales. Since her arrival, the league has seen a 48% increase in game attendance, a 61% spike in merchandise sales, and a staggering 170% rise in TV ratings. Unlike Reese, who complains about salaries that do not reflect NBA pay scales, Clark is actively making the league more profitable by drawing in fans, sponsors, and revenue streams that never existed before. Patrick highlighted this stark contrast, emphasizing that Clark is doing what truly matters, elevating the game, while Reese is merely demanding more money from a league that is struggling to stay afloat. The cold reality is that if Clark were to get injured or step away from the game, this recent wave of enthusiasm surrounding the WNBA would likely collapse overnight, proving that it is her presence, not Reese's rhetoric, that is reshaping the league's financial outlook. Reese's entitlement becomes even more perplexing when considering her own financial reality. While she laments her $74,000 annual WNBA salary, she neglects to acknowledge that her NEL, name, image, and likeness deals during her college career at LSU brought in an estimated $1.8 million, courtesy of endorsements from major brands like Reebok, PlayStation, McDonald's, and Coach. Even now, she remains one of the highest-earning women's basketball players due to these lucrative sponsorships. And yet, instead of using her influence to advocate for long-term financial sustainability within the WNBA, she is threatening to strike, an action that would only exacerbate the league's struggles. Patrick made it clear that Reese's position is not only economically untenable but also laughably short-sighted. She willingly chose to enter a league that has been financially dependent on NBA subsidies for its entire existence and is now expressing shock that it cannot afford to pay its players exorbitant salaries. The fundamental principle Patrick hammered home is that professional sports salaries are dictated by market value, not by arbitrary demands for fairness. Caitlin Clark, through her star power and on-court excellence, is actively increasing the WNBA's market value, whereas Reese and others are merely complaining about a financial structure that has been in place for decades. ESPN recently reported that the WNBA's 2024 season has seen a record-breaking surge in viewership, with Clark's games leading the charge. This influx of attention directly correlates to increased advertising revenue, more significant sponsorship deals, and a genuine opportunity for the league to finally achieve financial stability. And yet, rather than embracing this moment and capitalizing on the momentum, Reese and her counterparts are choosing to position themselves as victims rather than contributors to the league's success. At the end of the day, sports is a business, and Clark is undeniably good for business. Reese, on the other hand, is not. Patrick's brutal assessment laid bare the truth that if WNBA players genuinely want higher salaries, they need to earn them by driving revenue, expanding the league's audience, and making women's basketball a more valuable product. Instead of demanding more from a struggling enterprise, they should be following Clark's example, filling arenas, boosting TV ratings, and generating excitement around the sport. Reese's approach, complaining about financial realities that she willingly signed up for, does nothing to advance the WNBA's long-term growth. The question now is whether she will rise to the occasion and prove that she deserves a higher paycheck, or whether she will continue down the path of entitlement while Clark cements herself as the true face of women's basketball. As Patrick succinctly put it, if more WNBA players adopted Clark's mentality rather than Reese's, the league wouldn't need to beg for money. It would be making it on its own.